Yes, it is indeed magic in this edition of Ethan's Movie Lounge. And that magic, of course, is Louis Leterrier's Now You See Me. Now, that's a French director's name. I may be mispronouncing it. Could be Louis Leterrier or whatever the fuck. But for me sounding as pretentious as fuck and trying to sound French, Louis Leterrier. But is an action director who kind of came out of the Luc Besson factory, kind of made his name with movies like The Transporter, and he even directed probably the best Incredible Hulk film, which is The Incredible Hulk, that starred Edward Norton. And of course, this dude is responsible for a lot of other action films, but this one especially is a real gem in his filmography, because this is definitely a film that when I saw it when it came out, I had zero expectations for it. I was like, it kind of looks douchey in a way, but at that time, like, I'm a big fan of Jesse Eisenberg, and of course Woody Harrelson, my doppelganger, and Isla Fisher, of course. The cast was so stacked that it was almost irresistible to not go see the film, because probably the most irksome person in it is Dave Franco, but even he's like kind of badass in the flick. But you've also got basically what the film is of Now You See Me is it's about a bunch of magicians who are brought together by this secret organization called the Eye that is responsible for like preserving real magic and stuff like that. And so these four like real egotistical magicians are joined together, and that of course is Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Isla Fisher, and Dave Franco, and they all each have individual talents that are even bigger than their egos, and they're all brought together and they learn to work as a team. And they end up with a benefactor played none other than by Michael Caine. And then of course there's also Morgan Freeman, who plays a guy named Thaddeus Bradley or some pretentious ass shit like that. But his whole game is like debunking mad magicians and shit, exposing them for the potential frauds that they are. And then we also have Mark Ruffalo as an FBI agent who's like tracking these magicians who are essentially like pulling off these very elaborate heists, but posing it as a magic trick, and really like messing with them. And then he also gets teamed up with this Interpol agent played by the lovely Melanie Laurent, who was in Inglourious Bastards most notably. And the whole, like I said, the very cast stack. Like Louis Leterrier is a director that he really understands how to make a fast-paced, intriguing action film. And this one, like I said, definitely a surprise, because when I went and saw it in theaters back in like I don't know, it had to have been like 2015, back in the mid-teens and stuff. You go to something like this. This is like those kind of globe-trotting adventure films, that action adventure films that you would see, like back all the way up till like maybe the mid-aughts, where that stuff started kind of dying out and stuff. But every once in a while you get a gem like Now You See Me, where it definitely, especially the thing about it is when you're making a movie like this, it's only as good as your cast, because most of your storylines are gonna be hack as fuck, and the action's gonna be lame. But I mean, just look at all these motherfuckers, man, and they all work perfectly together. It's almost as if like Christopher Nolan had made a movie about magicians and stuff. Like if Inception didn't have any like deep philosophical mindfucky things in them. But the film itself does offer up a hell of a twist. I don't really want to spoil it. I feel like most people have seen this franchise. And I will say this about the movie, the way it ended, because it was a hell of a twist, and it's one of those things when you watch it again, you can kind of see how it's played. I forget. There's a spoiler alert. Like this is Ethan's Movie Lounge. Same thing with 70s and 90s. The only thing I don't spoil on is if I do quickie reviews or the second takes, because those are like movies that are either still in theaters or just came out the year that I did the video. So it's like not shit that's been out at least, 10, 20 years. I don't really think anybody cares that much if it's spoiled for you or not. But, when you find out that it's, the FBI guy played by Mark Ruffalo that's been orchestrating all this shit to get revenge for his dad, who was essentially, inadvertently killed by all these people that they scam, everything kind of comes together. It's a very well written script, like I think it was Boaz Yakin and along with some other people that wrote the script. And, it's very like, and like I said, all the characters are great. Of course, Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson had already worked brilliantly together in Zombieland before this film, and their chemistry is undeniable. And of course, Isla Fisher is so lovely. Ever since her like fucking batshit crazy turn in Wedding Crashers, she's really been charming audiences and stuff. And like I said, even Dave Franco, even though he's still the bitch in the bunch, he's still holding his own against like these titans of film and stuff. And of course, like Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman, are almost come as a package deal. You need your old white British guy and your old black dude that has a great voice and it can also serve as the voice of reason. Also, like borderline sleazy, anything that Morgan Freeman plays. He's always right on that line, but you trust him because of that fucking voice. That voice is somebody that you want to trust. But, people like, one thing that always irks me about people, they talk about movies and stuff, is like, when you look at a film like Now You See Me, it's real easy just to write it off as, mindless bullshit. But, I look at it as something that it's fun, and it's like mind blowing up to a point. It's not like mind blowing, like, wow, you don't really see the ending coming, but you do know something is afoot. And like definitely a movie about magicians offers up that whole like sleight of hand. You're never going to know what's really going on until you know what the fuck's going on type thing. It's a common trope with these types of movies. But what's really amazing is they manage to make magicians look cool, and even though they play up the douche angle that's very prominent with magicians, and also but also these are the kind of guys you want to root for and shit, because it does have that whole element, they're robbing from the rich and giving to the poor type thing, little Robin Hood aspect right there. And that's definitely something that carried over into the sequels and stuff. But I will say this, when I saw the film, I never in my life would have thought they would have made a sequel. And I guess in a way, they kind of opened it up for a sequel where they're all initiated into the eye and stuff. But that second one, other than having Lizzie Kaplan in it, just doesn't do anything. It doesn't even touch how great the original Now You See Me was. It's just sometimes you cannot capture lightning in a bottle twice. Sometimes you just get it. And especially the right director. When the director of the second one, John M. Chu, he's more apt to doing like dance movies like Step Up, or the rom-coms like Crazy Rich Asians. He doesn't, maybe with the exception of something like G.I. Joe, he has the experience to do this kind of action. But in a way, like the action in Now You See Me is not cartoonish. It's realistic in a way, even though we're dealing with magic, but it's not supernatural magic. It's all magic that can be explained. And of course, who better to explain all that shit than Morgan Freeman? If you got to listen to somebody talk endlessly, it might as well be Morgan Freeman. And, it's like, and of course, Michael Caine, anything that dude's in, he adds a layer of class that nobody else before him or after him it can be able to even, fathom, And so it's just like I said, for the cinema, it just has to be fun and entertaining and just tell me a good story. Like it's a good story. It's kind of like a soft serve revenge flick in a way, very brilliantly done. The only difference between this shit and like a serial killer is there's nobody really gets hurt in it. The only thing that really gets hurt is the rich man's ass pocket. So I mean, and who really gives a fuck about that? Unless you're a rich person, and then otherwise you really give a shit. But it was amazing too, because at this point, this was kind of Jesse Eisenberg's transition to being a badass. Instead of like kind of the sad, neurotic, unsure of themselves characters that he played and stuff like, Adventureland and The Squid and the Whale, and even Zombieland too. And, but the third one, be sure to check out my quickie review of Now You See Me, Now You Don't. It actually holds up better to the first one than the second one does. And they bring everybody back. They even bring back Lizzie Kaplan in it. But it also depends, the director, Ruben Fleischer, for Now You See Me, Now You Don't, is on that level of a Louis Leterrier, somebody, but that can also add more comedy to it, though. Because, of course, Ruben Fleischer had already directed Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson in Zombieland. So he knows how to work with these two actors, not just separately, but also together and playing off their chemistry. And the thing about Ruben Fleischer, you know, he does other stuff like 30 Minutes or Less and Gangster Squad and stuff like that. And he's able to do like these kind of ultra violent movies, but also have them very fun, lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek type thing. And this one's like for PG-13 action movies, you know, they're pretty fun. Definitely something that, you know, you could even take to see the whole family. Like I'd argue that, you know, it's a PG-13 movie. There's a few sexual innuendos or whatever, but this is kind of a movie for like the whole family, you know, to enjoy, like cross demographics. Like if you don't really like this movie, you're kind of an asshole. You know, I have that issue where like I get a lot of shit from the film snobs because I like shit like this. I'll sit here like I'm giving like fucking 15 minutes praising fucking Now You See Me, and people are like, what the fuck is wrong with this dude? He didn't know shit about movies. It's like, as you can see, I love all movies. If it's good, it's good. I don't give a fuck if some pretentious art house director made it or some journeyman action director made it. If it's good, it's good. It also, you know, you got like Hitchcock said, it all starts with the fucking script, and these motherfuckers clearly had a solid script. They got a director who could handle them, not only the material, but also the actors, and have it all flow. Because like the movie moves like a bullet. It's just under 2 hours, and there's not really a dead space in it. You're on the edge of your seat the whole time. And even after you know what's going to happen upon that initial viewing, the subsequent viewings only get better because you're like, because you kind of want to be like Morgan Freeman's character. You want to debunk the movie for being bullshit, but it's not. It's actually very well done and a fun ride. You know, what movies are supposed to be. You know, we kind of forget that movies are a storytelling medium. You know, we go to movies to be entertained. We don't really want to be depressed. We want to see, you know, we want to see people win that don't normally win, even though it may be more interesting seeing a movie about a loser. You know, it's still like fun. It's cathartic in a way to see people really succeed in the film where they don't really do it in real life. So, you know, if you haven't seen it, definitely not. This has the potential to be the Fast and the Furious for magicians because they've already got 3. I mean, I guarantee you that after Now You See Me, Now You Don't, they've left it open for another one. There'll probably at least be a 4th one, you know, and then, you know, who knows? It just keeps going and going. You know, the motherfuckers will be doing this shit when they're in a wheelchair, you know, making the nursing home disappear or something. But, you know, these types of movies are needed, you know, because like when you go to the movies, you know, you want to, sometimes you just want a good old popcorn flick. It's that balance of releases, you know, because if you just have the same old shit coming out, you know, it does kind of get old and stuff. But it's like definitely a movie I never thought would have had sequels, but here we are. You know, it's just the way you got to bank in it. But I don't think either one of the sequels ever touched what this one was. This is a gem of a film, and definitely the kind of movie that you would see playing on a loop on TNT. And it's definitely something you could jump into if you've already seen it. You can watch it anytime, and you know, be like, oh yeah, that's bad. You know, it's what movies should be. But as you know, this is Ethan's Movie Lounge. This is a place where we kick back talking about movies. You know, whatever the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, because there's a lot of shit to dive into and talk shit about. And, you know, may have guests on this thing. If there's a particular movie or like just some grievance that you want to do, hit me up. We'll collaborate. You know, we'll get into it. Ethan's Movie Lounge, get all jazzy and whatever the fuck. And, you know, just really get to the root of what cinema is. Not just philosophically, but, you know, materialistically. You know, because at the end of the day, it's also a business. You know, they're there to make money. You can't be mad at people for wanting to make money. And the thing about it is, if these movies weren't making money, there wouldn't be more than one of them. So don't hate the player, hate the motherfucking game.